So let's do a little bit of a thought exercise, Brett. Last week we talked about whether anybody could break into the Liverpool or Manchester City sides from the rest of the league. I want to ask you a different question this week.
Okay.
So pretend that the world is falling apart, which isn't that big of a stretch right now, and the Premier League is going to adopt more of an American sports model. I know most people just turned me off, and I don't blame you. I just saved you 45 minutes. You're welcome. But if this was moving to more of a franchise model and all contracts were voided and every single player in the Premier League was now available for a draft, let's do a quick draft board of who you think the top picks would be. And so the only other criteria I will give you is whoever you draft, you're looking for a franchise cornerstone that is going to get a fresh 5-year contract. So it's just kind of like what they're doing in the NFL right now. And for this purposes, because otherwise it becomes impossible, assume that you're able to hire a manager, able to bring out the best talents of the cornerstones that you draft.
Okay.
So like it would be stupid to, draft TAA and then have Mourinho manage him. Or it'd be crazy to have.
He wouldn't play under Mourinho.
Be crazy to have Harry Kane and then have, Sean Dyche. Like, that's not what we're talking about here. Just assume the manager's going to maximize the abilities of whatever franchise cornerstones you draft. So you get the exercise?
Yeah, I got it.
Cool. All right. So because I did not let you prepare ahead of time for your own good, for the audience, I asked him if he wanted to, and he said no, which is my recommendation, because he would have gone back in the laboratory, got out the Bunsen burners, tried to balance everything through the pH table, and then he would have given me the exact same 5 answers that he was going to give me anyway. So I just saved him a lot of hours of time. He's welcome. All right, so I think we should do this 1 to 5 because I have a feeling you're going to get pretty wonky when you get, a little bit down your board. You'll have some different answers than I did. And I want to have a little bit of an argument at the top. So I'll give you my number 1, and then you either agree or you could say you take somebody above them. Deal?
All right, deal. Let's do it. I'm excited.
All right. Number 1 in the franchise draft, I'm going to build around this guy for the next 5 years. I am taking Phil.
No. Disagree.
No, deities aren't eligible.
Okay.
So I am taking a mortal Phil Foden, number 1 overall for this draft.
That was the first guy in my mind. It's a no-brainer. I was talking about this with somebody earlier in the week, and one of the things that's incredible about City is that Phil Foden, if he played for literally, I think, any other club, maybe except Liverpool, but yeah, I think even Liverpool. But if he played for any other club, we would be talking about this dude nonstop. He is so talented, still so young, super productive. It is nuts that City is so good they can somehow blunt the star talent that's emanating from this dude. It's crazy. Yeah. I think he is, without a doubt, no-brainer, number 1. The production he's putting up at his age in the toughest league in the world. I mean, it's as far as world talents, he's probably just behind Mbappe at this point, and Haaland. So it's a no-brainer.
21 years old, plays everywhere in the attacking third. Tremendous productivity, tremendous versatility, and you're absolutely getting him coming into his prime, and he can be a beacon for you to attract other world-class talent to get to play with this dude. I mean, I don't know if we're looking at a Ronaldo Messi level career, but of anybody in the Premier League at anywhere even close to his age that you could build around, I think I agree. I'm glad. I mean, I obviously agree since I threw him out first. I'm glad you didn't embarrass me and say that was a terrible pick. So Phil Foden, number 1 guy to build around in the entire Premier League going forward.
Well, I mean, the weird thing is if you the players that immediately probably come to your mind as far as the stars in the Premier League, they're all guys that you wouldn't want to build a team around right now. De Bruyne is on the wrong side of 30. Salah is good to go on the wrong side. 30. Sadio Mane is 30, I think. So there's a lot of guys in the league right now that are the stars. Harry Kane, same deal. So Son, all those dudes, they're aging out. So it's really interesting. When you think about it, is Phil Foden probably isn't the name when you think Premier League draft that pops the top of your head. But you have to remember that every other one of those guys is definitely aging the wrong way, and he hasn't even hit his prime yet.
That's exactly right. This is why it's so different from last week's exercise, right? Last week's exercise is on current form, who are the most important players for the systems that Manchester City and Liverpool play. This is not that exercise whatsoever. Yeah. And what I think is interesting is outside of what you just said, calling that out, I don't think almost any of the names we mentioned last week, with one big exception, are going to be in the top 5, and probably not my top 10. I mean, like, De Bruyne, I think, is, the best player in the world right now, or maybe not the world, but the best player in the Premier League for sure, and the most impactful. But, you're getting age 31, 32, 33, unless he goes Luka Modric. If he goes Luka Modric, he should probably be number 1 on this draft. But the other thing is, like, if you think about this from the American sports point of view, and this is also true for true franchise cornerstones, like, you're not going to get them for just 5 years. Like, you have such an advantage in retaining them on their extensions and on their next deals. Their families are settled, language barriers are broken down, they're well taken care of, huge commercial opportunities, that you probably get Foden for the next 10 to 15. And you definitely don't want De Bruyne when he's 40.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the other thing you have to look at too is Mahrez and De Bruyne or KDB are 1 and 2 in terms of overall goals for City this year. They're also finishing way above their expected totals. De Bruyne has 15 on 6.5 XG, and Mahrez has 23 on 14. And I mean, like, when you're taking 31-year-olds that are finishing that well, it's not a good sign going forward. KDB might fall off a cliff probably a little faster than he's looking like right now too. Like, that's the other part of this. So yeah, I mean, it's Foden's all the way. Like, I think he's second in all competitions in terms of non-penalty expected goals and assists for City. I think behind Jesus, who obviously just went fucking bonkers that one game. So yeah, I mean, he's a clear number 1. I agree that I think this list is going to probably be the antithesis of like a fantasy 1-year draft for the Premier League, because there's going to be a lot of guys that are on the up but aren't quite there in the forefront of the top names yet.
And in putting my board together, it really like crystallized something that I've been noticing but never like put thought to voice, which is the huge transition that the Premier League is going to be looking at in the next couple of years. I mean, obviously there can be some stars that come into the Premier League from other leagues, and that's always going to happen. But not all, but a vast majority of the best players are in like the 28 to 32-year-old age range. And then there's this huge wave of sub 25-year-olds coming behind them. But like that, like 25, 26, 27, 28, 29 range, outside of like Harry Kane, and I guess Son's still 29, but 25 to 28 isn't as deep as you would expect, considering that is the absolute prime years of a soccer player's career. So it's a little bit surprising, this donuts that's forming with the young talent versus the super established guys. And that middle of that age curve is a little bit lacking right now in the Premier League.
Yeah, no, it really is. That's interesting. I guess I haven't thought about this enough to really see that. It was kind of like with the U.S. men's national team, like the gap between, the Donovan Dempsey era and then the Pulisic era. There was like just no one there, right? And hopefully for the Premier League, and it will, because it's the richest league in the world, and they'll just sign players that are 24 to 28 because they have the most money in that league. But yeah, there definitely is a weird kind of age gap. There isn't too many guys that I would consider star level quality that are sitting right in between like 24 and 28 right now.
Right. And like 3 years ago, if I said, hey, who do you think are the most valuable or best players in the league? It would have been the same list, right? It would be Salah, it would be De Bruyne, it would be Van Dijk, it would have been Hazard, and they all would have been 26, 27 years old 3 years ago, or 28. So it's just weird that there's this gap right now.
Eden Hazard on his way to China, and we're talking just a few years ago, he's one of the best players in the Premier League.
He was. Man. I mean, that's
life
not
comes at you fast, Toby. Life comes at you fast.
Life does come at you fast. All right, well, we're not going too fast here, so I guess we should speed it up a little bit, so we still have some time to talk about this week's action. Number 2 on my board. This is probably because of my DNA growing up a Chelsea fan and a Mourinho fan. I really like building through the spine. Like, the spine is just way more important to me than probably it is in a lot of other people's opinions.
Here comes Mason Mount. Here comes Mason
Mount.
No,
not yet. No. Reuben Diaz. Reuben Diaz, 24 years old, building out a center back, really getting a solid line. Van Dijk's 30. And there's not, as we're talking about, a lot of people on the right side of the age curve, because like center backs mature later, right? Like, attackers mature earlier. They get more chances. They use their pace and their trickery and dribbling in order to get playing time. And central defenders are people that kind of have to learn their craft a little bit more. So like, I guess I could have looked at like Kanate at 22 at Liverpool, but Diaz is one of the only young, extraordinarily talented, well-established central defenders, and that's what I want to build my team around.
Yeah, I would even go as far as say is he's not even the best center back on Manchester City. I think a lot of what we saw last year was a weird confluence of events with City that made Reuben Diaz look a lot better than he was. And the first was they weren't as aggressive with the press, so he wasn't defending like Vincent Kompany style in 40 yards of space nearly as much. Second, Pep kind of came up with the Kyle Walker thing where he put Walker as like his Fernandinho as the counter stopper. And so Walker would hang back and basically play the role that most of the time in pressing systems center backs do, where they're the ones that are covering a massive amounts of grounds and the speedy striker trying to get in behind when the ball is lost. And Reuben Diaz didn't really do that. And second, City slowed their pace way down. So they just had the ball more. There was less possessions in their games, which are basically less chances for turnovers for a guy like Diaz to get exposed. But I rock with American Report. I think he's really good, and he's still only 27. I definitely think he is the best center back on City. I do think that, like, in general, a lot of center backs are byproducts of what's in front of them and the way that a system is structured. So I think it's dangerous to go with any center back in your top five, especially when Trent Alexander-Arnold is sitting right there. And who cares if he can't defend? Put that dude out there and they're going to score goals.
So he's your number 2 selection. He's my number 3 selection. So it's not like it's wildly off. I
was waiting. I think it was just a matter of time, I think, before we got to him. But yeah, I think this is more almost like an overall value of the position in a theoretical like this. I just don't think center backs are that valuable, because you could have James Tarkowski and Ben Mee. If you put Conte in front of them, they're going to look amazing, right?
Yeah, like, I don't know. I guess this is just a philosophical difference. And if we had a different draft, was like a fantasy style draft, who would you take right now to win a championship? Van Dijk, I think, would be a top 3 pick for a lot of people.
I mean, honestly, but the thing is I think Van Dijk is great. Like, he deserves a lot of the credit that he does. He's the world's best center back at this point. I don't even know if it's really arguable. But a lot of Liverpool's overall team success actually coincided with Fabinho sitting right in front of him. That is really where the defense took off. And then this year, when they went crazy, it was when Thiago got healthy, and then it was Thiago, Fabinho, and Van Dijk. So I always just think there's a chain reaction. Like, I think this is part of like the fun of soccer, right? Like, this is the fun of this kind of debate, is like, there isn't a yes. Like, we all can go to basketball. One guy can like outsize influence a game, and it's hard to argue against like what other guys are doing around him. But in soccer, there's 11 guys on the pitch. Systems vary, game states vary. So like, this is like part of the fun of this debate is I think like it's hard to parse like, where is Van Dijk's excellence contributing to Liverpool's overall success? Like, how much did Reuben Diaz really do for City's success last year? It could have been more than I'm giving him credit for, or it could be less than you are. Like, but this is fun. I love these discussions because of that.
All right, so you've got Alexander-Arnold second. I have him third. Obviously, like, having that disruptive of a creative force coming out of your back four is just outrageous. We've barely ever seen this before in the world of soccer, certainly not at the level he's both doing it and at the level Liverpool's playing, and the way they flip the field and really taken advantage of his unique abilities and built a system around him. I think you'd have to do the same if he was your franchise cornerstone. You'd have to take the same position that Klopp has and build almost your entire system to take advantage of those traits, because obviously he's not being drafted second overall for defense, right? And even though he's a defender. So I think you would have to build your entire system around him. But if you did that, you have an advantage that no other team on the planet has. And we're watching it play out right now for a team that's dominating the world.
Yeah, and I mean, really, like the thing about TAA is you could put him as like a free 8, and his skill set would still carry over. Like he'd still create a ton of change. He wouldn't have the goals probably. Actually, might have a little more playing a little higher up the pitch. But like even when you watch Liverpool play, like there's a term called the half space, and it's basically kind of in between the middle of the pitch and then the touchline. And Alexander Arnold, that's typically a spot where you used to find like forwards and strikers and wingers. But like when Liverpool play, like when you see him have the ball, like Alexander Arnold will sit in that area of the pitch. So he literally functions as an attacker kind of already from the right back spot. I just think his skill set, I think it's like Reece James. Like Reece James could probably move centrally and be just fine too. You know what I mean? So like he will, you can knock him and say you have to design the system around him. And yeah, he's a little finicky in terms of like he's not a perfect fit for something. He's not like the classic overlapping right back. But I also think that you could still slot him anywhere in a starting 11 somewhere in the field, and he'd be incredibly valuable still for what he does.
All right. Well, I've given my top 3. You owe me your third. Who's third on your list?
Boy. I really want to troll anybody that is actually listening to this so bad right now, but I don't know if I can pull the trigger. Oh, all right. Well, I'm gonna go safe. If you don't. I'm gonna go safe. I actually think that he has kind of gotten lost in the shuffle this year, but like Raheem Sterling is still one of the Premier League's best attackers. He's just only played, despite City being every competition super deep, he's only played about 2,800 minutes this year. So, if he was on any other team where he was like, when he was healthy, he was in the starting 11, like his goal totals, his creation totals be way higher. But I still think he's one of the best attackers in the world. And he's only 27. So you get probably a few more years out of his prime, a few more years where he starts to fade. But as of right now, like he would move to Arsenal. He'd be their best attacker. I mean, would he be the best attacker on Chelsea? Maybe.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
100%.
Chelsea, I mean, you keep going on the list. Spurs, maybe there'd be a choice between him and Harry Kane. But like you put him on any other team, you put him in Madrid, he's at least their second best attacker on Madrid. Barcelona, he's their best attacker. So like this is the kind of thing that gets lost. Is like City is so good that they have Raheem Sterling, one of the world's best attackers, like a part-time player. And I still think, for me, given the age construct, he would fit in. That would be my third.
Yeah. Okay. Not on my top 5 list. So that's an interesting take, because I would rather have Harry Kane at 28 than Sterling at 27. I think his game's gonna age better with his distribution and his playmaking. Yeah. He might even drop back deeper in the field because he's such a good distributor from midfield. And so if I was going to take a kind of, mid to late 20s attacker, I would definitely take Kane over Sterling, but to each their own. Now is exactly when you get to call me a homer. With the 4th overall selection, now it's Mason Mount time.
Yeah,
it's definitely Mason Mount time.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's a good pick. Like I used to give him a lot of flack early in his first, when Lampard first came over. I was like, he's got a favorite. This dude doesn't deserve the minutes, but he has gotten so much better. He's so influential now. I mean, I'll let you take it away. You watch him week in and week out. Tell me why.
No, I don't have to take it too far away. I mean, he's 23 years old. He's contributing all over the place in the modern game with the emphasis on pressing. Yeah. He's excellent at that part of the game, and then turning defense into attack at all points on the field. Yeah. And he's also, I mean, like, if you want to get into the softer stuff, like his teammates love him. If you're talking about building a franchise, a real cornerstone, he's going to help you with recruitment. He's the perfect age, and he's not the best in the world at any single skill, but like Lampard, he is excellent at almost every part of the game of soccer.
Yeah. You can also play him anywhere pretty much other than striker at this point. Like he can play in the attacking band as a winger or a 10. He can play as a free 8. You probably could play him, depending on who the other part of the pivot is, as a 2, depending on your system. And he could play like the Aaron Ramsey kind of role. He's kind of like the opposite of Trent Alexander-Arnold, where you probably do have to carve out like sort of stuff around him. With Mount, he is like that Swiss Army knife of productivity, where you can fit him with any type of system in any type of way, and he's still probably going to find somewhere to be really productive.
Yeah, and that's exactly why he's nailed on the starters list in England, and Alexander-Arnold isn't. Alexander-Arnold is probably the more ultimately valuable football player in the world sphere, but he's not the Swiss Army knife. And so TAA doesn't always end up in the England 11, but Mount is a mainstay now, which is really interesting, even though TAA is probably, the more transcendent player. All right, who's your 4?
My 4th would have been Harry Kane. So I agree. Okay. I think he's going to have, like you said, that deep line playmaker thing where he's not going to necessarily have to be this poacher kind of guy. You can drop him. You can probably, they're already basically been doing it with him and Son. His Son's the guy that's making the runs actually into the box, and Kane's been the guy that's been dropping deep now. So he's going to still have an impact and an influence on matches into his early 30s and probably mid 30s, because he's just going to keep dropping deeper and deeper on the pitch. The goal totals might not be there, but probably the overall influence on like shot creation, which matters, is going to be there. I think he's my 4th. I think, goals are incredibly valuable, and I just think Raheem Sterling's really, really good, and we just continually forget about this. He's also taken an inordinate amount of flack over his career for things that aren't his fault.
But true. But when you watch a highlight reel of him sailing the ball over the bar or going wide on easy goals, and it's 26 minutes long, then you got to rethink how transcendent he might be.
Well, but see, this is the thing about attackers is if you have a highlight reel where you can watch 26 minutes of a guy missing chances, he is getting into spots constantly to have those chances. And I think for his entire career, I'll actually look it up right now because I'm on his page. So let's see. He has 73 basically expected goals in his career and 106 total goals. So that's going to be including some of his earlier years with City and Liverpool, but he's probably right on his expected goal totals for the most part. So, it happens. But the point is like the guy gets into positions to have an entire highlight reel that can go 15, 20 minutes of him missing chances because he's always getting into spots to score. And that's what matters.
I hope him and Timo are just sending their highlight reels of misses to each other, because they're the only ones who really appreciate it. And maybe you could be the third person on that text chain.
Your boy Timo he's creeping up to his being level on his expected goal tallies too. He's got 4 on about 6.9 right now. He gets hot for one match. He's right there.
None of it means I expect him to score even when he's in front of the net with the ball. All right, so let's just do the last one, and then let's take a quick break and do this week's games. I'll just read off the short list I had when I was considering, and I'm pretty confident you're not going to agree with my 5th pick, but here we are. João Cancelo, 27.
Love it.
Allison's 29. If you wanted a goalkeeper,
God,
then I think he's your top choice. And 10 more years of Allison, because goalkeepers are good into the late 30s, is pretty attractive to build a team around.
Yeah.
Jesus, Manchester City, Jota, Rashford, Saka, Jadon Sancho, who is 22 years old and 1 year ago probably would have been the 3rd or 4th pick on this list before Manchester United fucking ruined him. Declan Rice, Reece James, and then the guy I'm actually going to pick, who is the only person on this entire list who has had a Champions League winning goal at his age, Kai Havertz, 22 years old, play him anywhere on the field, already accomplished, coming into his own as a striker, but can play in a 2, can play in a 3, can play in the midfield. He can play absolutely everywhere. Tremendous skill set, great attitude, and incredibly German. So if I'm getting the next Thomas Mueller with the 5th pick to build my team around to create the new Bayern, I'm doing it.
I think you're getting the German Bobby Firmino is what you're getting. Because one of the big things with Havertz, it's so valuable, is he wins the ball back as an attacker.
Yes.
And we don't even know yet exactly how valuable that is, but with the emphasis on pressing high up the pitch and creating chances because you're turning it over in the opponent's third, that is huge. And we've talked about this before with Chelsea too, right? That trio of Mount, Havertz, and Werner is their best, not because they're the most talented attackers, but partially because of what they do for the defense and the ability to regain possession in dangerous areas. Yep. Because all those guys press, and Havertz not only presses, but he wins the ball back. So it's an interesting one. I think he's going to be one of those guys that like will never post like a, like Sterling's had a 20-goal season, right? I don't know if Havertz is ever going to get to 20, but he may get to like 15 and 8 and do a ton of defensive work that helps his teams win and be better. So, I mean, he's interesting. And as for he wouldn't make my fifth pick. I think all the names you mentioned are awesome. Like they're all incredible players. I love Allison. Like he's incredible. I want to go with Mount, but I also really just want to troll anybody that's listening. I don't know what our audience is.
Troll away.
Oh, man. I'm gonna play it safe. I'm gonna tell you who I'm thinking of. I'm not gonna pick this guy. I am gonna go with Mount. I think at 23, with the number of minutes he has, with the way that he can play, he is immensely valuable for a number of reasons in this theoretical scenario. The guy
were you about to throw Jared Bowen out? Do you have a boner alert? Is that what we're doing here?
No.
Okay. All right. No. That's who I thought you were trolling me with. Who you got?
No, my troll is going to be, this is more like a general soccer fandom hatred thing going on right now with this guy, but my troll would be Jack Relish. So as the fifth, because a year ago today, when he was at Aston Villa, we were talking about him as a Premier League Player of the Year candidate. And he does so much in terms of getting the ball into the penalty box via dribbling or passing. That is so valuable. So it doesn't show up in his goal totals. He obviously has been hurt and kind of on the outside looking in with City this year. He's still actually basically been fairly good. He'd be the best attacker on literally any non-City, Liverpool, Chelsea team. I mean, you put him in Arsenal, they would love to have this dude as much as they're probably shitting on him right now. Spurs, same way. Like he would be a supercharged Kulusevski. We've seen what Kulusevski has done for him. But I do think that Mount is younger. He's way more adaptable. He's probably going to bring you more of the end product in terms of goals, which everybody loves. But Grealish is also like a hugely valuable player. I don't know if he'd be 5. I think him and Havertz are an interesting discussion in terms of overall value because they both do shit that isn't measured in goals and assists that's incredibly valuable. But like really just naming the final picks that you had, all those guys are awesome. Like the Premier League is in a really good place. So
and everybody I named except for Allison and Zhao are 25 or under.
Yeah, so, and this is the Cancelo fan club podcast, basically. So, like, the fact that he didn't make the top 5 is telling you what an embarrassment of riches that this league has right now.
All right, well, draft night 2023, we'll do this again, and we'll see if Haaland's the number 1 because he's in Manchester City. What I find most interesting is in your heart with that troll pick at the end, your top, like, of your top 20, if you had done the board, you might have the entire Manchester City lineup.
Oh, wow.
You just
100%.
love every one of those guys.
I mean, it's hard to like throw shade at me for that when it's quite clearly been the most dominant team in the world for the last 5 years. Like, go ahead, throw shade. I mean, liking the players for the team. I mean, Jesus, I almost made it as my 5th pick too. So yeah, I think my top 10 would have been like 7 City guys. So.
Oh, wow. Well, thumbs up to their board and their recruitment director because they have the Brett Corbito stamp of approval.
Yeah, which means nothing, but hats off to them.